Hello, everybody. I am Patty DeVito, the owner and founder of Wholistic Healing Atlanta. At Wholistic Healing Atlanta, we don't just treat symptoms. We look for underlying causes where your body may not be functioning well. It may be physical, such as genetic variants causing the breakdown, or diet, or lack of movement, or lack of sleep. We also look to see how a person is de-stressing. It could be emotional. We address emotions and trauma through a modality called quantum neuro reset therapy, or QNRT. It could be spiritual, and we address, as the client wishes, their spiritual life and any incongruencies in their life, who they're made to be, and how they're living. Anyway, we address all those areas, and I know I feel better when I'm addressing the body, the mind, and the soul. Today, we're going to talk about a very specific way to look at our health, and that is genetically. We're all born with a set of genes. In 1990, the Human Genome Project started and finished in 2003. The Human Genome Project was an international scientific research project with the goal of determining the base pairs that make up human DNA and identifying and mapping all the genes of the human genome, both from a physical and a functional standpoint. From that research, we have the ability to look at all of our genes and to see which ones have a variant or a mutation. This does not mean that we are destined to have certain illnesses if some of our genes are not working optimally. The good news is that your genes are not your destiny. We'll talk about how you can change the course of your life, specifically through holistic methylation, some very exciting things. So today I have a very special guest, Dr. Ken Parker. Dr. Parker is a natural health doctor located in Granbury, Texas. He graduated from chiropractic school in 2006 and has not stopped studying and learning since then. He has multiple certifications in nutrition-based techniques, and over 3,000 hours of study in acupuncture. He was among the first to be certified in holistic methylation and now helps teach and certify other doctors in the technique. He is in private practice in Granbury, Texas, and also teaches people how to do muscle testing, and he has an online course. He loves Jesus and actively serves in his church. He is a husband and a father to 3 wonderful children. He is also starting a ministry called Health with God. So please welcome Dr. Ken Parker.
Hey, Patty. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for coming and being with us. So I just sort of want to start, how did you start working as a chiropractor with genes?
That's a great question and a bit of a backstory. It really comes from perseverance. Right after I got married, my wife got really sick, and she was throwing up 20 to 30 times a day. And that lasted about 4 months. And we went to every health professional you could imagine trying to find answers. And the current medical model just wasn't giving us any answers. And we finally found an herbalist actually that did this weird thing called muscle testing. You know, you hold out your arm, and we did this muscle testing thing. And I was very skeptical, honestly, but through this evaluation, if you will, she found that there was a staph infection coming from her right knee, and told her to take this herbal product. And the next day she stopped throwing up. So you can imagine that was very eye-opening for me. And so what that began the process of learning for me of okay, I don't really understand that, but that was really cool. So I started studying muscle testing at that point, and eventually ended up in chiropractic school. After chiropractic school, it was just, like I said, a constant learning. Okay, I want to learn more about how God created this body to work and how it functions. And so it's been this constant drive and perseverance, honestly, to continue to find what's the root cause. You know, I think a lot of allopathic medicine focuses on symptoms and say, hey, if you have this symptom, try this or do this. And And I really wanted to say, okay, well, why are we having that symptom? And then, well, why is that? And then why is that? And why just keep asking at a deeper level of why? And about the deepest level we can get is the genes. So that's kind of what has driven me to get into genetics and how that plays into our health. So,
wow, that's quite a story. I don't think I knew that. So for our audience, let's start with some real basic questions. Like, what are genes and what do they do in our body?
Well, genes, we get what's called an allele from mom and an allele from dad. And those two alleles come together and create our gene. Okay? And so if we get part, like just eyes, for example, if you get a blue eye gene from mom and a blue eye gene from dad, you're going to have blue eyes. So that's kind of how the very basic premise works, is we get part of our gene from mom and part of our gene from dad. And those genes perform thousands and thousands of functions, but everything from our eye color to biochemical processes in the body. And those, as practitioners, are what we're really, more concerned with, is how do they affect our biochemistry. So these genes will activate certain enzymes, and those enzymes know what to do based off of those genes, hopefully, as long as there's no genetic variance there. So that's the basic premise of how the genes impact us, is we get a little piece from mom, a little piece from dad. And sometimes in the Genome Project you mentioned in the introduction, they found that there's certain alleles, we talked about allele from mom, allele from dad, there's certain alleles that create a risk for us. And they determined that if you have this allele in your gene, then that creates a risk of that gene not expressing or not functioning 100%. So if we get one risk allele from one parent and one good allele from another, that creates what we call a heterozygous genetic variant. So what that means is that gene may function at about 70% at best. And then let's say we get a risk from mom and a risk from dad, that gene may function at about 30% at best. That's a homozygous genetic variant. So, but just like you mentioned, we don't have to be a slave to our genes. They don't necessarily have to express, as long as we're taking good care of ourselves and giving our bodies what they need.
So how do we know if our genes are working optimally or not?
Well, that's a great question, because there's some people that will take a genetic test and they'll say, oh, I have this gene, and just assume automatically it's not working. So we have what's called a genotype and a phenotype. The genotype is the gene that's there. The phenotype is what is expressing. Usually we may not ever know a gene is expressing because it's maybe working normally. But oftentimes we figure out a gene is expressing through symptoms, or sometimes we can do it through lab work, or certain health issues start popping up. And as we dig into the genetics, we can say, oh, well, there's a genetic predisposition here. Something must have activated that gene.
Okay. So also another part, and this is something that I work a lot with, besides for being born with a variant, there's other things that can cause the genes not to work optimally. And I don't know if people realize that stress and diet and environmental toxins and medications that they've taken, and trauma, that's more like up my alley there, trauma. But what happens to the genes? How do they get damaged from those things that I just mentioned?
That's a fantastic question. So epigenetics is that environmental influence that impacts our genes. So when we have genetic expression, it doesn't necessarily, when we have a gene, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to express in a bad way, unless we put it into an environment that is a stressful environment, or what we call epigenetics, that those environmental influences on genes. And just like you mentioned, it could be chemical, it could be trauma, it could be stress, it could be a number of things that will impact and cause a gene to not express properly. So the way I like to explain it to my patients is health is like a four-legged table. So each leg of the table is just as important as the other leg. So we have a physical or structural leg of the table. That's the physical body. That's, how God created our structure, our spine. And as a chiropractor, we study a lot in that, but it's really more important as to how the structure impacts the nervous system, because the nervous system controls and coordinates everything in the body. So if there's interference in that nervous system, things aren't going to work correctly. So that's just that one leg of the table. Then we have the chemical leg, and that's where we get into the biochemistry, the genetic expression. It has to do with what we eat, drink, rub on our skin, or inhale that stresses the body. We have the mental, emotional leg of the table, and we have the spiritual leg of the table. So if our body can handle and adapt to the stressors in those areas, we're in a good place. But we all have a stress cup, and that stress cup gets filled up by any of those stressors. It could be physical stress, it could be chemical stress, it could be mental, emotional stress. So all of that fills that stress cup up. And when that stress cup overflows is when our body can no longer adapt. When the body can no longer adapt to the stress, it's gonna create symptoms, and some of those genetic variants can start expressing.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think people quite realize that their diet or crazy lifestyle. I don't know what it's like in Granbury. Here in Atlanta, it's a crazy lifestyle. You could have like the perfect supplements, the perfect diet, but if you're not worrying about that crazy stuff, that stuff's not going to work so well.
That's right. I always tell my patients, I can't out supplement a bad diet. The same is true. I mean, if you're going to play rugby and drink a 12-pack of beer every night, there's probably not much I can do to help you.
Yeah. I don't think, or even like rubbing stuff on my skin. Do they understand that that can be a negative effect on them? It's a lot of teaching to our patients.
Oh, absolutely. It all has an interplay. It all works together, or for the bad.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people have heard the word methylation, and I just want to ask you what it is and why is it so important?
Well, methylation is, there's a gene called MTHFR. And so methylation became a popular buzzword by the discovery of the MTHFR gene. So MTHFR is one of the genes that will damage this process called methylation. Unfortunately, it's a very small piece of the puzzle. And most people kind of put it in that bucket of MTHFR. But like I said, it's a very small piece of the puzzle. So all of these genes work together, and all these biochemical processes work together. So there's three things that the body needs for the biochemistry to function well and for the genes to express properly. The first thing they need is ATP, which is cellular energy. Our energy has to function normally and optimally. We have to be able to produce energy, and there's a lot of things that can damage that. Everything from antibiotics to other medications to trauma to there's many things that viruses, stuff like that. Even the current virus I've seen cause problems with energy production. So we have to have energy to produce any biochemical reaction. The second thing we have to have are the cofactors, and those cofactors are vitamins and nutrients. So we have to have vitamins and nutrients for all the biochemical processes to work normally and effectively. So the next thing and the last thing that we need is this process called methylation. I'm going to simplify it in that all methylation is a catalyst for these enzymatic activities and biochemical reactions to work effectively and efficiently. So, because if we tell you exactly what methylation is, it's adding a methyl group to a biochemical reaction. So most people are like, I don't know what that is. So in biochemistry can get very confusing if you try to look at all the little structures and how all of it works. So the simplicity of it is it's an enzymatic process. It helps to catalyze and helps these processes to work efficiently and effectively. So it is very necessary in our body's function and how all these processes work together.
Gotcha. I think that was very well simply described, so that's good. So now, what is holistic methylation? What is that thing that Dr. Jay Dunn has created that you help teach? I've been certified. Like, what is that?
Yeah, so holistic methylation is, if you look at the spelling, it's not spelled like typical holistic. It's really, we're trying to look at the person as a whole, and we're trying to look at all of these processes and not just that MTHFR gene. We're looking at how all of them interplay together as a whole. For the person as a whole, how is all this biochemistry and genetics, how is it all marrying together and working in harmony? So if we don't have everything working together holistically, and we just focus on one thing, that's where we're going to have problems. So holistic methylation, Dr. J is just phenomenal. She is such a great person, and she really kind of pioneered this in finding that, hey, these genes are playing an important role in the biochemistry. And so, her and I are a lot alike in that we just constantly want to ask why and dig in deeper and why. And so it's been a never-ending process for her, and it's still evolving because we're learning more and more and more about how all of it works together. So it is an evolving process as far as when we look at holistic methylation. We really just kind of want to look at the whole body, how all the biochemistry is working together related to our genes and our genetic expression.
Yeah, I just sort of try to explain it like synergistically. We want everything to work together, to make sure
Right.
And when it's working together, the body can heal and function optimally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, how do you support, like, if you find something, like, even as you said, like that ATP, like, how do you support it? How do you get it to start working?
So we use muscle testing to determine where the problem lies. In other words, if there is a gene that is not expressing properly, usually that means it's not either doesn't have enough of the cofactor. So we may have to say, okay, if we're not producing energy, why are we not producing energy? Are we missing a piece of the puzzle? And if it's a genetic variant, we may need more of that cofactor than somebody else. So we say, a common one for energy is an amino acid called carnitine. So for example, if we don't have enough carnitine, or we have a genetic variant that influences our ability to utilize carnitine, so we would then say, okay, do we need to give the body more carnitine? Or there's also a vitamin called ergothioneine, or actually an amino acid called ergothioneine that's found in mushrooms that helps carnitine get into the cell. So we then determine through the muscle testing and through this analysis, like, is it carnitine or is it more ergothioneine? Is it the mushrooms? Do we have enough carnitine to get into the cell? Is it just not getting there? So then we can find out through the muscle testing which one the body needs, or maybe they need both to help turn those energy cycles back on. Same is true of any other biochemical reaction. We can say, oh, maybe they don't have enough zinc, or maybe they don't have enough selenium, or even the B vitamins, which are super important for the methylation process.
So say I have a variant on the gene, say on the vitamin D receptor, so it's not being absorbed. Why not just take vitamin D?
So think of it like a lock and a key. So if your vitamin D receptor is not working well, there's a problem with the lock. The key would be vitamin D. So vitamin D is trying to unlock a lock that the key doesn't fit in very well anymore. So you have a variant in the gene. In other words, the key just isn't working all that well. So oftentimes we have to find out, well, what is going to help that key work better, or what's going to modify that lock a little bit so the key fits. So oftentimes we have to find those other factors that help with that. And with the vitamin D receptor in particular, it's often vitamin A and vitamin K that are also needed to help the lock so the key fits in and is, number one, utilized. but number two, actually works effectively and efficiently.
Yeah, because I know that people say, "Oh, my friend told me that if I take vitamin X or whatever, I'm going to feel better." And like,
Possibly.
well, I know like when the pandemic started shutting down things, everybody brought in their zinc that they were adding to what they were taking with the protocol. And I'm like, well, your body doesn't need zinc right now. Anyway, people. So Dr. Parker, what is your typical problems you see?
I don't know that I have a typical problem. I see. I see. Well, I want to be clear. Number one, that I don't treat the symptom. I don't treat the condition. I treat the person. So it truly is a whole person approach. Our goal is to get the body functioning the way God designed it. So in order to do that, we just go in and find where the function is, and not necessarily focused on the problem or the symptom. So, we don't really treat conditions. We treat the person and making sure that they're functioning the way God designed them. And but as far as what people show up with, oftentimes people show up with everything from diabetes to cancer to digestive issues to anxiety to energy issues. Fatigue is a really big one. We see a lot of fatigue. To chronic infections. So we see it all across the board. And what I found in this business is that anything can cause anything. So, I learned that with my wife. None of the medical profession figured out that a staph infection in her knee was causing her to throw up. So anything can cause anything. And so as we get in and find out functionally, how is the body functioning and what do we need to do to improve function? That's a deeper level, and the health will follow.
Yeah, I kind of tell people, like, if I have a drip coming down off my ceiling, that I can't just go above there and fix what's above there, because on the roof, it could be anywhere on the roof coming downstream.
Yeah.
So, we can't just plug up here. We have to kind of find the root cause of where the water's coming in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And another analogy I've heard that's great is if you live on a river and the water is polluted on that river, and you just start going out to right by where you live and say, I'm going to clean up this water. I'm going to clean up this water. You're going to spend a lifetime trying to clean up water unless you go upstream and figure out where the pollution's going into the water. So you really got to get to that source. Otherwise, you're going to be spinning your wheels. You
kind of live on a river lake, don't you?
I do. Well, I live right by one. So
yeah. But that's a great analogy too. Okay. So can my body heal if I take the supplements?
Healing comes in many forms. Healing can happen on the emotional level. And I've seen healing happen on an emotional level where you no longer need a supplement from an emotional healing. I've seen healing. God still heals. Jesus still heals today. He is still alive and well, and he still heals today. So I've seen miraculous healings, and I've seen healings through supplements. Even Jesus used natural means to help people heal. So yes, the body can heal. Sometimes it's through supplements. Sometimes it's through supplements and diet. Sometimes it's through the great work that you do through the mental, emotional side. Sometimes it's through the spiritual side. Sometimes, and in most cases, it's a combination.
So why shouldn't I go to the grocery store and buy some supplements, vitamins?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, we can. Sometimes that can create problems for us for a number of reasons. Let's back up to this whole MTHFR thing that we mentioned earlier. MTHFR is a genetic variant. It's where kind of the methylation got the buzzword. And The MTHFR gene has to do with the body converting folic acid into a usable form called methylfolate. A lot of these people that find out they have the MTHFR variant will just go say, oh yeah, they told me to take B12 and methylfolate. And they'll start taking that. And, I had a patient just yesterday that was on a lot of methylfolate, and her body did not like it at all. It was causing all kinds of other issues. So if we don't look at the holistic approach and look at all of it and how all of it just orchestrates together, we're gonna miss it. And some of these people will take something and not even realize they're causing other problems. Like they may oh yeah, I have really bad anxiety. Well, oftentimes if we take the wrong vitamins with a certain genetic variant, it can cause anxiety. So it's really important to get some help with this, and I wish there were more of us to really help people walk through this and figure out how all of it plays together. But from not buying it from the store, we also have quality issues. I know a few years ago there was a big case in New York where the district court there did a cease and desist order against several stores like Walgreens, Walmart. There were a bunch of stores in that list, and they pulled a bunch of supplements off the shelf because they said that there were certain things in those supplements. And when they did an analysis from a separate company, they found out that none of that stuff was in there. So they pulled all this stuff off the shelf. So unfortunately, sometimes we just don't know what we're getting when we just go buy the cheapest thing off the shelf.
Yeah, and sometimes it hurts people a little bit to pay for good supplements when they can go to Walgreens and get it for cheap. So.
Absolutely. And I have people all the time that bring in their cheaper supplements and they want to take them. And it's like, I can't get you better with this. Your body is not responding. And because it's just not the quality that we need.
Well, even sometimes, I said, look at the ingredients. What's the first ingredient and the second ingredient that you see there? And it's sugar and high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah, and I don't know what on earth they're putting those in supplements for, but I see that too. So, just had somebody said, "Oh, can I take this gummy, vitamin D?" I was like, "Well, vitamin D is part of the immune system, and it's super important for the immune system. And sugar actually lowers the immune system. So you're fighting an uphill battle taking a vitamin D full of sugar."
Yeah, I had somebody with rheumatoid arthritis taking some kind of gummy thing because he has a sweet tooth. I'm like, those belong in the trash can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what is a good brand? Can the local person do that, or do they really need to go through some kind of provider to get a good brand?
There's multiple good brands out there, and that's what I love about muscle testing. Is muscle testing allows us to determine what's good for that person. I carry multiple brands in my practice. NutraWest is a great brand that we use. Pure Encapsulations is a good one. There's one called Thorn. There's one. There's Designs for Health. There's a bunch of good brands out there. What's important is what's good for that person. I'll have some people bring their stuff in, and if their stuff tests really good to their body using muscle testing, I'm okay if they use it. If their body says, "Hey, this is a good one for me," that's great. Use it. If you have it and it works good and your body responds well to it, and go for it. But I find that, take vitamin D, for example. I have about 4 different companies that I use vitamin D with. And I found that there was a patient the other day that didn't test okay to 3 of those, but did to 1 of them. They're all great companies, but their body was, I call it biochemical individuality. We all have a different biochemical makeup, and we all respond a little bit differently. And sometimes for people coming in, an easy way, I don't follow this lifestyle, but a lot of people will understand the analogy of, if you give somebody a glass of wine and they get a little tipsy, and you can give somebody else a bottle of wine before they get tipsy, they're completely different biochemically. One person can only handle a glass or less, and one person can drink a whole bottle and be okay. We all have well, I say be okay, right? We all have that different biochemical makeup. So, the vitamins are the same. Some people respond great to one and not to another.
I think that is so cool how bio-individual we are, that three
Yeah.
won't work and one's like, wow, what is that about that person that one works? And that's what I also love about the muscle testing. I don't have to guess. I can muscle test.
That's right. It takes the guesswork out.
Yeah. So thank you for all that stuff. I just also want to ask you, you're starting to develop a program, Health with God. I was just wondering if you could tell us about it.
Absolutely. It's in its infancy. I was able to give a message on at my church the other day, and at the beginning of the year, I go to a church called Five Crowns, and Health with God is really all about balancing all of these areas. If we want to be who God created us to be, and we want to do what God created us to do, we need to be healthy to do that. Because if we do not feel good, are we actually going to have the energy? Are we going to have the vitality? Are we going to have what we need to be able to go live out this purpose that God created us for? So Health with God is really about that. It's about looking in all of these areas to say, okay, God, here I am. I want to do what you created me to do. But in order to do that, we have to have health to go forward with that. It's about health in your emotions. It's about health in your spiritual life. It's about health in your physical life, so that we can go be and do who God created us to be and do what God created us to do.
I love it. So is this program going to be like you take it to churches, or is it going to be online, or?
That's a great question. God just hadn't revealed all the steps to me yet. I just know that my passion is for his people to go live out their purpose, because, wow, if people would just live out the purpose God created them to live out, man, we would have such a different world right now. So, initially it is, I've thought about going to the church body with this message. I think online I'm going to just start creating some resources about, how do we do this? And my ultimate goal is to be able to have practitioners like yourself that would be a good referral source on this website. Say, hey, if you're in this area, go see this person. So creating that is going to be a challenge in of itself, because there's a lot of great practitioners out there, but also when we're looking at Health with God, we need some believers out there as well that are going to be able to pick up the baton here and run with it, and to help his people to do what he created them to do and be who he created them to be. So all the details aren't ironed out yet. I think an online platform is going to be great with some resources there. To be able to get some help in areas that they need help with, and also things they can do on their own. Self-care is super important as well.
Yeah, I love that program. Okay, and how about your muscle testing course? And what is it, and who is it for?
So muscle response testing, it's the course I created is called The Art of Muscle Response Testing. And who's it for is basically any family out there that has a sick kid or has something going on, and they're in a pinch. They're in the middle of the night. It's like, does my kid have an earache? What do I need to give them? How can I do a quick muscle test to say, hey, this is something that's beneficial for them, or this is something that's not beneficial for them? How can we determine, in the family, if you will, and this kind of part of Health with God, honestly, because how can we determine in the family, like, hey, my kid's having some symptoms. Should they be eating this? Is it a food sensitivity? Things like that. So it's really created to help families be able to utilize at the house for a quick test of like, hey, I got a runny nose and my kid's miserable and the doctor's not open until, next week or whatever, or maybe I can't even get in because my schedule is pretty full and I have some people that can't even get in for a couple of weeks. So like, how do we get that quick response of that? Okay, hey, I can take this essential oil or use this essential oil or take this particular herbal product or something like that to help me get through this. And if I get through it, great. If I need to go to a doctor, then hey, this isn't helping. I need to visit a professional. So it can save us those visits. But it's basically for that. But I will also say that I have come across many practitioners that have been taught muscle testing, but still aren't confident in it, that still need to learn some of the nuances. So there are many nuances. That's why I call it the art of muscle response testing, or the art of muscle testing, because it is truly an art. And sometimes when we learn those little nuances, our own confidence will increase, our skill level will increase, we'll get more accurate answers. So that's really kind of why I created it. We are going to continue on. I created a very basic course, and that one is truly just to learn, how do I do this muscle test? We are working on a more advanced course to learn, okay, what points are good for bacteria and virus and those energetic points. So we're working on some more advanced stuff, and also some ways to test yourself. You know, how do I test myself? So people can register for the online. I do have it online right now at muscleresponsetesting.com. You can learn just the basic one. The website, please excuse the website, it is truly in its infancy, but the registration and the class is all there. It's just literally a click on a button, and then you can register for the class to do the online version. I do offer at the office some in-office workshops, and that's the address right there, muscleresponsetesting.com. And the in-office workshops kind of slowed down a little bit because of the whole quarantine and things like that, which is why I decided I needed to put it online. And hopefully we can get at least the message out there for how to do this with the online class. In person is also, we can work with you a little more hand to hand and more detailed, but there's a great class there to do online as well, that you can learn some great basics.
Yeah, I love giving the families the tools. You know, I have some very savvy clients that, you know, it would be perfect for them to be able to learn that stuff. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So these classes are all video recorded from a live class. And there's comments you can do at the bottom if you have questions. And so I want to continue to evolve it and make sure people are getting what they need. But as far as the classes being live or in person, online, they are all recorded, so you can go at your own pace and go back and watch the videos over and over again. And I recommend doing that. But as far as the live classes I do here at the office, I'll post those online as they come, as we start getting back into that, coming out of the restrictions that we've had. But my focus has been to get it all online and continue to evolve that, because I think that's going to help more people.
Well, I don't know if you have any last comments before we end.
No, just thank you for what you do and helping God's people and doing your emotional work, which is, I feel like, just phenomenal, necessary thing for people. And I love the way that you just added in the holistic methylation with that. It's such an important piece. So thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you for all that you do. You know, and I love all the you know, because of how things got kind of shut down, you said, you know what, I'm going to keep on going and put things online, and again, serving God's people in a very specific way. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Patty. This has been fun.
All right, thanks. So thank you, Dr. Ken Parker. Thank you for coming in and talking with us today. I appreciate all the work that you do. I want you, if anybody wants to find more information about my work that I do at Wholistic Healing, there's a link right there, holistichealingatlanta.com. You can go to my YouTube channel, holistichealing.com, or my Facebook page as well. So thank you so much, and it was a pleasure.